What is going on, everybody? We are back with another review, and this time we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 36, the season finale of the Twilight Zone, and the episode is called A World of His Own. This was directed by Ralph Nelson, written by Richard Matheson, and let me make sure. Yes. The episode released July 1st, 1960. So, I don't know how series or season finales worked back in the 50s. They usually are made of a very, very big deal, and I don't know if, obviously, they just went, like, next week after this was automatically, like, it's just the next season. I don't know. Here's what I do know. To give you guys a quick plot summary, we start off with Gregory West and Mary sitting in Gregory West's home, big nice house. It was a nice home, and she's basically treating him like a king. Making him a glass to drink, and he ends the sentence with "my mistress," and I'm like, oh, so that's not even his wife. Well, you then look outside, and wifey staring in through the window, and she sees what's going on. She walks around. You hear her come in through the front door, and Mr. West panics. He stands up and gets away from old girl, drops his glass of his martini that he was drinking, and wifey starts banging on the door, and she's like, Gregory, I want to come in and give you a kiss, my dear. And she's all smiles and being lame. And he panics, and eventually you do see him open up the door, and she walks in. When she walks in, he's holding a pair of scissors, and old girl is gone. And he's like, well, how's it going, dear? And they have this like back and forth where she's trying to imply that she knows what's going on. He's implying that he knows that she knows what's going on, but he has no clue what she's talking about because, that's just how this goes. And eventually, she just comes out. She's like, I was standing at that window, and I seen you in the arms of another woman. And she starts running down this girl, and he's like, well, she's not exactly what you think she is. And Victoria is like, excuse me? So you are cheating. I'm going to get a divorce. And he then is like, no, you don't understand. Sit down, let me explain it to you. In this tape recorder, I can fully detail out anything, anyone, any living being, and they will magically exist. And at this point, I already called how this was going to end. And I mean, I hate to brag, but I was right. But she was like, well, you're full of shit. He's like, no. I detailed this character. I don't remember what the name you said was. And he was sitting right there in that chair where you're sitting now. And she basically continues to deny, and she's about to start leaving. He runs over and locks the door. He's like, no. I want you to witness this. He's like, I will create Mary again for you. I've done it so many times. I know the description by heart. And he gives the detail. He's like, she's 30 years old. She's 5'6", is wearing a pink blouse and has perfectly done hair. Like, he's going through giving all these descriptions of this woman. And you could actually tell that Victoria's getting a little jealous over what he was talking about. So, as he's sitting there, he's describing her walking into the front door, and during all of this, by the way, Victoria sneaks the key out of his pocket and unlocks the door. And as she unlocks it and she opens it, Mary walks through. And he's like, see? And she's like, no. If there's a hidden door in here somewhere or something, you let her out, had her walk around, and now you're trying to trick me into thinking I'm crazy. She's like, I was trying to commit you, because she was trying to get on the phone to get him committed. And she's like, now you're trying to get me committed. And he's like, no. I'm being honest with you. And he's like, and all I got to do to get rid of anybody is I cut the tape where I recorded their description and I throw it in the fireplace. And Mary's like, please don't do this again. And she's like, don't bring me back if you're going to do this. She's like, and he's like, no. She's my wife. I have to prove to her that I'm not crazy. And he does. He clips the thing. He throws it in the fireplace. It poofs. She disappears. And Victoria is still in disbelief, even though she just watched this woman disappear. And he takes the key and he locks it back up, and she comes over to talk to him, and he hugs her, and he's like, please stay. And she sneaks the key out of the pocket and walks over and tries to get out again. He runs up, closes it, takes the key, locks it back up. Or no, he doesn't lock it back up. That's right. She goes to leave. She gets out the door. And as she walks out, he pulls up the tape recorder. He's like, there's a large red-eyed elephant in the hallway, and will not let her pass. And all of a sudden you hear the bray of the elephant, and it cuts to the hall, and she's standing there in front of this elephant that's up on its hind legs and, doing its thing. And she runs back in the door, and she's like, Gregory, get the elephant out of my hall. And he's like, only if you promise to stay. And she's like, all right, I will stay, but I will eventually have you committed. It's going to happen. So finally he's like, you know what? I didn't want to do this. So he goes over, he removes a section of books, and there's a safe, and he opens up the safe. And what I called way earlier in the episode, he pulls out this envelope that says Victoria West. And when he opens the envelope, he pulls out the strand of what is her creation. And he says, look, he's like, I'm going to give you the choice. He's like, I created you too. And you're too perfect. And what ended up happening, today's the first time you ever disobeyed what I wanted you to do. Because he had told her to go see a movie. And she came back instead, caught him. And he was like, so, I'm going to give you the choice. Do you want to continue being my wife, or do you want to go? And she takes the envelope and she says, I know better than you to know that you're crazy. None of this is actually going the way that you're saying that it's going to go. And I don't even care. And she tosses the envelope into the fire. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm feeling weird. I don't feel normal. Are you seriously going to sit here and tell me that you weren't lying to me? And he just kind of looks at her, and all of a sudden you see the poof in the fireplace, and she disappears. And he goes, picks up the tape recorder, and he goes, her name's Victoria West. And he stops. And you see him hit stop on the tape recorder. He says, you know what? Never mind. Her name is Mary West. So he recreates Mary to come back. And he gives the description. It's like, as she's standing in her husband's office, making him a drink. And she shows up. She's all smiles. She's mixing the drink. And all of a sudden, he goes and sits with her. And as he's getting ready to walk over to her, he doesn't sit with her. As he's walking over to her, Rod Serling comes in, and he starts giving his end of the episode anecdote that he normally does. But he's sitting on top of the desk as he does it. And all of a sudden, you hear Greg go, and he walks over and grabs another envelope out of the safe, and it says Rod Serling on it. And he pulls out a handful of tape, and he just throws it into the fireplace. And all of a sudden, it poofs. Rod Serling poofs, and he's gone, kind of hinting that Greg West is the creator of everything in the Twilight Zone. So he is the Twilight Zone god. So yeah, that is the story. Now I'm going to let you guys know now, this ends up ranking up pretty high on my list. I thought the story was very well done. Even though I did another stupid thing where I predicted the ending, I still thoroughly enjoyed the way everything played out. This one is so far off from being horror, though, this specific episode. And it's sad, because I really wish there was more horror in the Twilight Zone. We're like sifting through so much shit just to get to the horror episodes. I think there's like 2 horror episodes this entire run, which is sad. However, what do I think of the series, the season as a whole? Kind of middle of the road for me. I think over and above all, if I'm being 100% honest, several days ago at this point, several days ago, something along those lines, we just recently finished Welcome to Paradox. And I actually think Welcome to Paradox does this better overall. Obviously, towards the end of Welcome to Paradox, the last couple episodes were a little rough, but for the most part, it had like a 70 to 80% success ratio for me, whereas this one has like a 30 to 40%. Now, the 30 or 40% in this is really, really good. Don't get me wrong. And a lot of my problems are more my issues with the season. I expect things to go a certain way to have an extremely messed up ending, and then it doesn't happen. Or something just isn't explained very well in the end. Like, obviously, you're supposed to come up with the ending on your own in your head, but that's not what I'm watching movies and shit for. Like, don't give me that power. That's not, if I wanted that power, I'd write my own damn stories. But yeah, so it has its pros, it has its cons. This episode specifically, though, really good. So with that being said, all that's left, guys, all that's left, and I already have them written down in order, ranking-wise. All that's left is for you to come back in probably about an hour, half hour to an hour. Yeah, it'd be about 40, 50 minutes. Come back, and we will be ranking Season 1 of The Twilight Zone. And not only will we be ranking Season 1 of The Twilight Zone, we will also be picking what is next. I love you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace. Maybe. There it goes.